time for us to hand over to both Barry and Lindsey Hargreaves, who will be talking about the pioneering sustainable abstraction within the Lark catchment.
Thank you, Sam. Is it easiest for me to share my screen to kick off with some slides?
Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
Okay, can you just confirm? Can you confirm that it's
we can
visible?
See that.
Thank you. So yes, thank you and good morning, everybody. As Sam's mentioned, this is a bit of a double act presentation with Lindsey Hargreaves, who's going to be talking after me, and really that's the star billing of this this piece. I'm standing in this section for Jim Stevens from Lark Catchment Partnership, who has a medical appointment that means he's unable to attend, and I know he would have really liked to have presented on this water sharing pilot. It's been, Jim's had a lot of involvement in it, so I'm stepping in for Jim. I just want to put a few introductory slides in before I hand over to Lindsey. I don't want to overstep my mark as a substitute for Jim, so I've tried not to interfere too much with what I think Jim would have wanted to say. So I've just got a few introductory slides about the water sharing pilot before I hand over to Lindsey. So I thought, first of all, I would just highlight how repurposing the slide that my colleague Alison showed yesterday, and really that the Lark Catchment Partnership, as it's being evolving, is really sort of grasping the nettle about implementing a sort of systems-based approach to managing the Lark catchment and its surrounding environments. I think Andrew put in the chat that it's got some way to go, but I think it's making great strides in piecing a lot of this together at the moment. And clearly for a catchment partnership, that one of the major pieces of this sort of jigsaw puzzle on delivering a systems-based approach for the Lark is the subject of water resources and abstraction management within the catchment, both from surface water and the groundwater aquifer. So it's obviously logical that the partnership has an interest in engaging with this this area, this piece of the jigsaw puzzle. But equally, I just wanted to highlight that intention of catch partnerships taking a more proactive role in developing solutions around water resources and abstraction management is also shared by the government and its agencies. And just to highlight that in 2017, Defra published its abstraction plan, which had a particular focus on developing a stronger catchment focus to the way abstraction management was managed and planned. In addition, there are various other areas of the abstraction plan around ending significant exemptions, the move over to environmental permit regs, modernising a largely paper-based system to a much more modern-day online version, and revoking unused licenses. But the stronger catchment focus is a clear element of the abstraction plan in order to both develop additional water availability to support businesses and agricultural and resilient public supply, but also to really build resilience and sustainability within the catchments and the environment that it supports. And that's reiterated again in a subsequent Defra document, the draft policy statement for water resources infrastructure, that acknowledges the need for integrated catchment management and sets out again that the abstraction plan highlights a need for a stronger catchment focus, bringing together the Environment Agency and catchment groups to develop local solutions that deliver local benefits, particularly in preparing for the future that we heard a lot about yesterday in the Water for Tomorrow presentation pack. And a part of that abstraction plan led to the Environment Agency priority catchment projects. You'll see the vision that's set out for those priority catchments written there. I'm not going to read that out, but I would highlight the link on the slide there to the Environment Agency's Consult website, where you can see more details about these priority catchments. And many of you, if not all of you, will be aware that CamEO was one of those initial priority catchments, one of the initial 4, along with East Suffolk, South 40-foot and the Idle and Torn. And there are now a further 6 priority catchments that are coming online. The first 4 have had a key milestone for this was to develop revised abstraction licensing strategies, and they have been recently published, and you'll be able to access those via the link. And the intention is to develop similar revised abstraction licensing strategies in the next priority catchments. And alongside that, to support the need for this stronger catchment focus and embed it within the catchment-based approach, a working group was established on water resources and abstraction management that is co-chaired by the Environment Agency and the Rivers Trust, and well attended by a number of other organisations, including agricultural and land and business representatives, water companies, statutory bodies including Defra, local abstractor groups, Food and Drinks Federation, and UK Irrigation Authority, to mention a few. And the aims of that group really are to help support the delivery in those initial priority catchments, but also to facilitate a much richer, wider engagement through CABA in local water resource management. And as part of that, to help identify and overcome barriers to collaborative working, enable the sharing of best practice and uptake of best practice that's developed within catchments. And the group was also successful through a collaborative agreement from the Environment Agency to establish a fund for some of those priority catchments to deliver some water resources engagement projects, which the Lark Catchment Partnership did submit an application, was successful too, which has helped support the water sharing pilot that that Lindsey will detail shortly. So just to highlight here from an RLCP perspective, and this is from a discussion with Jim around how he sees some of the short to medium term objectives around water resource management within the sub-catchment partnership. And it's for the Lark Catchment Partnership to play a key role to helping develop a more refined and shared understanding of the Lark's water balance within the catchment, particularly the interaction between the groundwater aquifer and the surface water flows, to understand that a bit better. Really to help facilitate the implementation of the water sharing pilot itself, and to engage the wider stakeholders as appropriate with that pilot. I'm really keen not to do any spoilers on the pilot, so Lindsey can cover that. And really importantly, to progressively strengthen the pilot and the partnership endeavours that have been started through the collaborative work with Lindsey and the other abstractors within the catchment, and fostering that CABA approach to water resources management. In doing so, the pilot is just at the very start of what I hope will be a very successful journey in more collaborative water resource management between the stakeholders within the Lark catchment. So that was me just hopefully teeing up Lindsey to talk a bit more about the pilot itself and some of the detail about it. So hopefully that was a sufficient introduction, Lindsey, and over to you.
Thank you for that, Barry. And Sam, can you just give me a quick sound check? Am I coming through okay? Right, thanks very much. And also thank you, Sam, to you and Jesse for inviting me along. As Barry said, we're very sorry that Jim Stevens isn't here. as part of this, because it's very much his baby. But anyway, we'll do the best we can in Jim's absence. So I was going to say a little bit about the Lark Abstractors group, where it's come from, a little bit about its history, because I think there are times when a knowledge of where you come from can help you work out where you might be going. And the Lark Abstractors group was formed about 30 years ago in 1991 in response to a mid-season ban in abstraction. And that ban, if you like, illustrates. So it was at middle of August, right at the late July, early August, right at the peak of the growing season, and the order came out to all abstractors in the Lark to cease abstraction, and that was, pretty serious consequences. And I guess what it illustrated was a lack of understanding and communication between abstractors and the regulator. Abstractors had reached the point where irrigation was a very important part of what they were doing. The regulator was still of the mindset or their understanding was that irrigation was a nice to have, an add-on, and if it wasn't there, well, too bad. Since then, the group has focused on that relationship between abstractors and the regulator. So in 1991 was just about the change from National Rivers Authority to the Environment Agency. So it's the Environment Agency as far as this conversation is concerned. And whilst the membership of the group is open to any abstractor in the Lark, the focus is on spray irrigation. We have from time to time looked at other things, but that's where the focus is, and as I've just mentioned, the relationship between abstractors. So it forms a communication link between abstractors and the regulator, so that we can understand each other a little bit better and avoid the kind of catastrophic events like an outright ban. And when I look at the progress that's been made over that period, 30 years, there are times when you think, goodness me, 30 years, what have we achieved? But on the other hand, I think it is, it is a fact that from that day to this, we have not had an outright cessation order on groundwater abstractions, and that the dialogue has been greatly improved. And I would say that as a general thing in this whole water environment, we've moved from a set of relationships based on suspicion and confrontation to a set of relationships that are now based on collaboration and problem solving. And that, truthfully, is a massive shift. It's a shame that it's taken 30 years, but that's the way these things go, and all sorts of other things have happened as well. I've been involved. And the abstractor base within the Lark is a mix of summer and winter abstractions and groundwater and surface water abstractions, and of course it's all complicated by this very close relationship between the aquifer and the flow in the river. So it's difficult to talk of one without thinking of the other in terms of abstractions, where the water's coming from. And there are seasonal effects as well, which come into this process, and we'll be looking at those in a minute or two. Just a little bit about me. I'm Lindsey Hargreaves. I'm chairman of the group. I think I took over the chair in about 2008, and I joined the group when I moved into the district in 1993. So I haven't been there from the beginning, but nearly from the beginning. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is for others to judge, but it does show a certain degree of continuity, I suppose. For most of that time, I've been a practitioner. I'm a farmer by background. I've been working in the Lark, working in abstraction businesses, growing crops. So I guess that's where that's fairly well embedded in the way I think and in my psyche. But I've stepped back from the coalface now, so to speak, and so I spend my time focusing more on regulation and the evolution of policy. The water sharing project, water sharing pilot, was it's a really exciting opportunity, and I know I speak for my group, for the Lark Abstractors, when I say that for things to have evolved to the point where we're now having this kind of conversation is a great credit to everyone involved, and not least of which I think is the agency, the Environment Agency. And I forgive the wry smile when I saw a comment, I think it was Helen made a comment about, come on, we've got to stop talking and start doing. That's a great one coming from the agency. Will you please, get that message as high up into your organization as you can, because sometimes getting the message through does take a while, and I think I can claim some first-hand experience of that, and sorry to harp on about 30 years because it'll keep coming up. That these things take a very long time, and so when we came to when we had this opportunity to look at the pilot, on the one hand there was excitement, and there still is excitement. On the other hand, I'm not holding my breath. Nothing's going to happen very quickly. This is going to be a process of gaining trust, of fully understanding, of gaining the right kind of knowledge, and because we have a diverse set of stakeholders to satisfy. The farming interests, as important as they might be, and of course farmers think they're very, very important. I think now most people think they're important, but there are degrees of importance. Those have got to be balanced with the needs and requirements of everyone else, and I think we all understand that. So we were given the opportunity within the Lark Abstractors group to create and test innovative water management solutions, and I hope we are rising to that challenge. So it's correct to say that the focus of this, it's digestible lumps, as it were, manageable pieces. So we're focusing on surface water, and we're focusing on a particular stretch of the river, Lark, from running from Bury St Edmunds to Mildenhall, and that pulled out a group of 12 abstractors. And when we look at that group and their concerns, and they are the concerns that those guys have, are echoed right across the group. So it's it is a bit of they are an example, a subset that have a lot of in common with everyone else. And so what are the kind of concerns? Why are we interested in this? Well, we heard yesterday in some of the papers some of these things of why abstractors are getting a bit jumpy. And of course we have the requirements of the Water Framework Directive, and particularly more recently the no deterioration factor, and we've seen loss of license quantity in groundwater licenses. We've seen higher hands-off flow restrictions in surface water abstractions, all of which of course put a greater pressure on the reliability and security of the water supply of this vital production resource in this area. And we've also seen changing weather patterns, and I think now there's enough evidence to say that the weather patterns are changing. We can debate the cause. That doesn't concern us today, but the fact is that we are seeing longer periods of no rainfall. We're seeing more high rainfall events, and we're seeing sustained periods of dry weather and sustained periods of wet winter, weather, and those are no longer seasonally dependent. And I think it's probably fair to say that when we look at the regulatory process for abstraction licensing, it was built around some fairly some core parameters, which I have no doubt were appropriate on the day, but that was many decades ago, and now we're seeing a greatly changed environment, which and we need a set of rules that to work with that reflect that. And so, in brief, I'm going to suggest that that regulatory structure that we're still having to work to today firstly uses season as a proxy for flow. So it regards winter water as more readily available and higher flow than summer water, and it regards summer water as more precious, and generally because the flows are low. So we've got high flows in the winter and low flows in the summer. And it also assumes a binary, an annual cycle. That generally speaking, you know, not in most years, pretty much in every year, there was enough water rainfall falling in the winter that we could capture and store to meet our summer needs. And when it came to backstop regulation, there is a kind of a binary on-off approach. If we think of hands-off flows, for example, we don't have an abstraction rate based on flow. We have that modulates with flow. We have an on-off situation. If the flow is X plus, you can abstract. If it's X minus, you can't. And it's understandable that that kind of thing was based on the level of technology at the time, that measuring flow rates, recording and transmitting, communicating that information was pretty steady. It was pretty slow, and you know, someone would have to troop down, measure the flow, go back to the office, and this sort of thing, see what the trend was like, look at the weather forecast, and then make a judgment. In these days of higher tech and near real-time flow measurements, you know, we ought to be able to respond much more quickly. But anyway, that's we might come back to that sort of thing later. So I'm going to suggest that time has overtaken the way we do things, and it's appropriate to have a good look at it. And the problem with the set of rules that we have now is that it builds in inflexibility. So at a time when licenses are either winter or summer, based on it means that when high flows are available in summer, we can't use them very easily. When hands-off flow conditions are on off, there is a slow response. So when we get a rapid change in flow, we can't do anything about it until we've got permission, by which time the flow has probably receded. So it was that set of things, if you like, that were starting to say to us, well, if we are looking at innovative and disruptive ways of doing things, how can we better optimize the resource opportunity? And I ought to, at this point, just make a comment, put in a little comment that says we are really concerned as agricultural abstractors to make sure that we have a healthy river. So to that extent, you know, we are right in there with the River Lark Catchment Partnership. This is not about the farmers, this is about the River Lark. You know, we're in this game for the long term, and we've got to come up with solutions that are just a little bit cleverer than the ones that we've had, because we are facing a tighter situation. There are more people competing for the resource is behaving in a different way, and we've got to respond to that. So our pilot's work began in the summer of 2019, and we sat around a table, and I guess the clear output of that meeting was that there was a lot of enthusiasm amongst the abstractors to take this group of 12 to take a collaborative approach. Now, on the one hand, people understandably precious and defensive and protective of their licenses, their individual licenses, but there was this willingness to say, well, okay, if we can do it collaboratively and do a better job, we've really got to throw ourselves behind that concept. And what we quickly realized that is our old friend knowledge and information, that we didn't have enough. So the trust, as Barry mentioned in his introduction, applied for some funding, and we were able to commission Cranfield, or the partnership of the Catchment Trust was able to commission Cranfield to carry out some fairly superficial but nevertheless illuminating research, do a bit of a study on the behavior of the abstractors and also the flow characteristics of the river. And what that illustrated very clearly was that there were opportunities. There was evidence from that high-level study that, that there was flow in the river that could be captured and wasn't being captured, and there was abstractor behaviour which was constrained by license conditions that was resulting in opportunities being missed. So then it was a case of, well, okay, can we identify those blockages, and can we come up with some ideas of how to do it? You know, why is it that 12 businesses operating in isolation miss opportunities? Well, of course, when you start looking at that one closely, you can see that the in-season within season requirements of different businesses don't always align. People don't always need water at the same time. Storage capacity is not always available when the water is available. Weather patterns can restrict abstractions, and dry periods can influence the the spot demands. And then we come back to our old friend, the slow and lumpy response to changes in flow conditions. So we're losing opportunities simply because we can't react. Our first sharing pilot proposal was drawn up as a result of all this work, a bit of a toe in the water, to say, well, okay, there are 3 elements to a license, and maybe if we can look at ways of sharing those. So and those 3 key elements were the license quantity, a hands-off flow, and abstraction point, the point of physical point of abstraction. And so we looked at this and kind of said, well, okay, if we as a group of abstractors are able to share any license quantity that we're not likely to use, if we are able to work together so that we can manage hands-off flows to optimize abstraction but maintain a given flow in the river, and if we can move abstract from different points, license points on the river, will that help us to take more water? And that, in a sense, that's where that's the point that we've reached, because what that is, where that's taken us is to the regulatory blockage. That yes, there is some really positive sentiment from within the agency that these sorts of things are workable, are practical, they're relevant, but the rules don't allow it. So we are working on Andy Chapman, who's on the call today, working very closely with Andy, who's been very helpful, and so we will take this forward a piece at a time. Looking at it.
Sorry to jump in. Hi, Lindsey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry to jump in and interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure we had a chance for some of the questions to be answered as we're coming near to the close of the session. But I'll give you a chance to finish what you were saying.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's really then where do we go in the longer term, and what is this all for? What we know now is that we don't know enough about the river flow. We know more than we did, but we need to model the river flow to better understand that. We need to model the infrastructure implications of optimizing abstraction opportunities. So we will need to completely rethink how this all works in terms of the pump capacity, storage capacity, those infrastructure, the technology to manage a much more complex system. We will need to see how it fits in, how this fits in with all the other work being done in the river by other, looking at wetlands and floodplains, methods and strategies to smooth out the flow in the river, and to see how they could help us. So it's not we don't exist in a bubble as abstractors. We don't even exist. The River Lark doesn't exist as a bubble, because we could go through this process and still find that there isn't enough water to go around. What do we do then? That's how it links into CamEO and then WRE, into a more regional approach. So Barry made the point, it's the start of a journey. The journey so far, to my knowledge, has taken a very long time. I just hope that the pace of change can accelerate, and I am optimistic that it will. Jessie, sorry for overrunning a bit. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's great. Thank you for both presentations there, and really good to hear more detail on where we've got to and where we're going to go. On that, one question was from Anna about what are the barriers within these pilots, and the point these need to be known and shared as they are critical areas of risk and vulnerability assessments.
Yeah, there are lots of barriers, and that's an observation, not a criticism. And also this point about sharing, because one of the big, hopefully one of the big successes from this pilot will be what we can learn from it for other areas to take into account other catchments when they're looking at there. So we do have this regulatory barrier. We have a knowledge barrier. We have a capex barrier. We have a cultural barrier. So I mentioned in the just towards the end that it is inevitable that in order to capture flow more optimally, there will need to be investment. Investment needs confidence. So until the abstractors have the confidence to know that everything is that the plan is possible. Now, but at the moment we can dream all that we like about the plan. The regulation doesn't allow it. So so we have to build that case and go to the regulator and say, look, in our opinion, this is where we need to be. This is what success will look like. This is how all stakeholders, how the river in total will benefit. Come on, give us, the rules are man-made. Change the rules to help us crack on. And then there is just the weight of capital required. Can agri-food production can it afford this level of investment? So are we going to need a bit of help from outside to make this all work?
Thank you. I have another question. Barry, did you want to add anything before I go on to it?
I would have given a very similar answer to Lindsey, so nothing more to add really. It's there are barriers, and to pick up on Anna's previous question, if you look at the adaptive management cycle, there are those barriers Lindsey has just identified are throughout the chain there, and it's a big cultural change to work in this way, and that's a huge barrier to overcome from all positions. But I think this is where the pilot has is moving, and I accept from Lindsey that he'd like to see things move faster in terms of practical implementation, but the cultural change required is significant, and this is a really good step in the right direction.
Absolutely, thank you both. There was another question on what are the tangible benefits and advancements in knowledge or practice as a result of the pilot?
Well, I can only say the pilot so far, and as much as although this has been going for nearly 2 years, this pilot, since our first meeting, it is barely out of the starting block in terms of where it should lead. So if it's a case of where do we hope to be, then that's quite a different matter from where we are. So we're starting to open the can in terms of knowledge, and it's showing us how much knowledge we're short of, and starting to inform us as to where we need to start looking more closely. So is that an answer?
Yes, I think so. It also answers the next question, which is what does success look like for the Abstractors group? I don't know if you want to add anything else on that point.
Yeah, if I might, it is that. So what the farmer abstractors are looking for is security, and I was going to say certainty. Look, we're working with in the open environment, so you can't have absolute certainty on anything. But the thing is that as a group of businesses, we are feeling increasingly vulnerable, and so it's how do we change the risk-based nature of water abstraction? How do we move it into safer territory or less unstable territory? I'm just going to. I've just seen a queries box on the screen, which reminds me, and I'm very sorry. I should have said something early. earlier, Akuri was worked very hard with in the early stages of the pilot, and I was really pleased yesterday to see that Akuri is staying with us, as it were, as project manager in Water for Tomorrow, and I think it's a fantastic piece of news, and that's great for this whole process. And and thank you, Akuri, for your work so far, and I look forward to working with you as we go forward, and many other people here today, of course. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely echo that, and really appreciate your talk, both Barry and Lindsey, and it's really great to hear. We'll have this recording for anyone who missed it, but yeah, my thanks go out to you. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll give everyone a quick break